In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I'm here with a very interesting guest. I'm with Mark Huber, who's the director of growth at MetaDataio. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, especially the ones who are really focusing on how can you drive demand gen, how can you actually leverage automation technology to drive those processes for you, have probably come across MetaData. It's essentially the first demand generation platform for B2B marketers. And we're going to be learning, all about what that means today. And we're also going to be looking at sort of, how does inbound, how does ABM play together, and how do you actually productize and processize this, and within your company. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Lucas. I appreciate it.
Very good. So, I gave a broad overview of MetaData. You're going to be the better person to describe what it's all about. Maybe give us a 360 overview.
Yep. So I'll go on a little bit of a rant at first, but I think for us, we feel like we are competing against ABM platforms in the eyes of our customers, but we don't really think of ourselves as an ABM platform. And what I mean by that is there are so many different ways that you can be doing ABM that to be kind of tied to how ABM platforms think you should be doing ABM is not what we believe in. So for MetaData, you can run really targeted demand generation campaigns across paid social channels, in addition to running really targeted ABM campaigns as well. And the two big differentiators for us are, as marketers, we never have enough time, we never have enough people, and we never know really what's working and what's not working. So by using MetaData, you can launch campaign experiments and you'll see what's actually not just driving engagement, but driving opportunities and revenue. And then have the platform put your remaining budget behind the campaigns that are delivering the results that you want. And most importantly, you can do it all from a single platform. You don't need to log into these individual ad channels and the constantly changing UI and all those headaches that come with it. And we want to be the hub for anyone who's on the hook for pipeline and revenue.
You mentioned that there's a little bit of a maybe confusion around ABM, or at least this is how I understand what you were saying. Like maybe help us a little bit. How do you guys think about ABM that might be a little bit different to what might be the common way, or maybe sort of, give us an idea. How do you think about it?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we believe in is if you were to go ask 100 marketers what ABM means, you'd probably get close to 100 different definitions. And we don't think of it as a platform. We really think of it as an approach that you can take. Very few companies can do ABM and ABM only. You typically have to have a large budget and the resources to support it. So what we look at ABM as is part of your broader demand generation just approach. So for us, good demand generation is really what most ABM is right now. And what I mean by that is many companies are picking a list of target accounts and just running demand gen campaigns to those target accounts. So in our eyes, that's not really what ABM is. That's what good demand generation is. And for us, ABM is, trying to get more, not just personalized in your content and in your outreach, but segmenting your account list even further. So you could be doing that using, technographic data. You could be doing that using intent data and just narrowing down the type of message that you're trying to put out there. So it's not just hey, here's a list of accounts and we're going to market to those accounts.
Super interesting. So you're coming more from sort of the outreach angle rather than like an ads angle. Is that like, or maybe give us?
I'd say it really relies on close collaboration between sales and marketing. So sales may be doing the outreach, but marketing, can be doing, targeted paid advertising or, posting organically on LinkedIn and trying to, get in front of your target accounts or your ICP. So it's always a balancing act. And really, I think a lot of what companies make the mistake of is ABM, account-based marketing, and only focusing on the marketing component. Whereas you have to be talking with sales, you have to be signing off on what that account list is, and you have to be coordinated, and you can't do ABM, without really good relationships with your sales team.
Very good. I was about to think you're going to say you can't do ABM without a good account list.
So. Well, that's, if we want to talk about that for a sec, that's the biggest thing that we see is that, if you, and I'm going to go on a rant here for a quick second, Oftentimes your sales team will come up with a list of accounts that would be great to have as logos on your website. And you take that list and you go start to run campaigns, and 3, 6, 9 months later, you don't really have very many results to show for it. And I think there's a couple people out there that have said this. Dave Gerhardt has, I think Chris Walker has. Good ABM, like 50, 60, 70% of good ABM is the target account list. So it's not just what logos would look nice on my site, but trying to figure out, of the accounts that you truly can sell into, like what do you have an unfair competitive advantage of when it comes to marketing to those accounts in ways that your other competing tools or services can't do.
Very cool. Maybe tell us a little bit more about MetaData. Who's using it? Like, who would be sort of the individual within the companies, or in which type of companies, to raise the hand and say, hey, we need something like that?
Yep. So it's exclusively B2B companies. I'd say it's primarily B2B SaaS companies, but we have some other B2B industries that we're working in as well, manufacturing being one of them. In a simple way of saying it, anyone who's accountable for pipeline and revenue would be a good fit to use metadata, because metadata itself is not optimizing for clicks and engagement, but it's trying to follow those people through opportunity creation and hopefully revenue generation. So your ad platform could be telling you that this campaign is great because it's showing a high click-through rate or the engagement rate is high. But if that's not actually resulting in metrics that your CMO or CFO would care about, then what are you really doing there? If you want to get more specific on titles, it depends on the size of the company. Typically, we work with, I'd say, companies that are about 100 employees on the low end, into the low thousands on the high end. And the titles are going to change a little bit, but it's usually directors of demand generation, VPs of marketing, and people that have a marketing automation platform. And more importantly, are spending, at least I'd say 15K or so a month on paid social, just so all of these experiments that you're running can reach statistical significance.
Makes sense. Super interesting. Now I'm curious though, because obviously you're heading up growth, and how do you think about the journey of somebody actually getting started with metadata? Like, sort of, what are the channels that you guys are, leveraging? What is somebody walking through in order to get started?
Yep. So I think Jason Widup and I would form a pretty awesome two-person team right now. We're going to be growing soon, but we're a two-man band with some good agency partners right now. And we feel like we should be doing things differently, because many of our competitors are running the 2015 demand gen playbook to gated content, to then kicking over to, an SDR or your AE when there's no real purchase intent. So what we are trying to do is only, I guess, to take a step back, we only hand over demo requests to our sales team. So we are not trying to waste their time with leads that maybe reached a lead score threshold. We actually don't even score leads right now because we don't believe in it. And what we're doing is we're trying to educate and warm up those people by way of, I'd say, organic LinkedIn, in addition to other channels, by using metadata to promote ungated content. So we're trying to get in front of them. We're trying to just get them a little bit more familiar with how ABM is broken, what's wrong with it, how there's a better way, and beginning to introduce that concept, and really just trying to build a relationship without asking for anything in return. It's easier, when you can use a little bit easier when you can use intent data, and you can see, people who may truly be in market right now. But what we're also trying to do is focus on, the 98, 99% of people who aren't in market, and trying to just create trust and build that relationship, so that when they are looking for a demand generation platform, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, that they already know who they're going to, hopefully buy, because we've given them so much without asking for anything in return.
How do you, as a head of growth, think about the website? Like, what role does the website play sort of in your orchestra of demand generation?
Yeah, so it is I would say, our biggest product marketing asset right now. So we relaunched the website about 2 months ago, and it was a beast. We overhauled our messaging. We flipped the focus from it being centered on us and our tech, and more on our audience and the pain and frustrations and the craziness that they have to live in to speak to them. So for us, we're trying to be very relatable in the language that we're using, mostly because it's the language that our audience uses. We write how we talk as if you were talking to a friend or another marketer in your network. And I think for us, what we try to do is we use that as kind of our hub for where we're trying to drive traffic to. We're still, very much in the early stages of building out kind of the resources section of the site with blog content and more ungated content. But we're trying to become I would say, the hub for people who want to learn about how to run better paid campaigns, and more importantly, what they can be doing to, hit their pipeline and revenue number. And oh, by the way, metadata can help make it easier, for you to do that, but we're also not pushing metadata onto you.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, it's quite cool that you brought up the change of the website recently. What's your current stance on it? Where do you see the strength? Where do you see the room for improvement from now on for the page?
Yep. So great question. I would say the strength right now, and this is one of the things that I think led to the success that we've seen so far, is the messaging. And we spent so much time speaking to our best customers, new prospects in pipeline, just B2B marketers in general, and then even using winter.com, which is a pretty cool tool to get qualitative feedback. And we tried to find a really good mix of people along kind of the B2B marketing spectrum to see what is the story that we need to be telling. So I think the story right now is so much better than where it was, 3, 6, 9 months ago. But I think also what we need to do more of is any of the resources content, like I mentioned before, we're starting to publish, I'd say, better content, but we're really not doing a good job at promoting related content, within blogs, within other, videos and whatnot, to try and get people to basically just choose their own adventure and just help them run better campaigns. So that was kind of intentional. We were shooting for a really good site, but not a perfect site. And what we wanted to do was just get the story up and the site up, and then begin to chip off some of these other areas in time. So that's our big focus, I'd say, for the next couple months.
I think you brought up something which sometimes gets underestimated a little bit, this story, right? The ability to tell the full story of the product. What is something maybe in the process that you learned that you didn't know before about, the importance of that story, or something that surprised you, in that process?
Yep. So I would say what I learned, and this is probably the biggest piece of advice I can share, is don't start with the website. If you start with the website, you're going to get it wrong. What you need to do is you need to start with the story. So I've learned from countless mentors and other B2B marketing leaders that you should not make the mistake of trying to redo the website as your first big bet when you join a new company. So thankfully I listened to that. But, a couple months in, I was thinking, all right, if the website sucks, we need to redo the website. Well, yes, the website sucked, but if you start with the website first and you're thinking, oh, we need this page and that page and it needs to look like this, none of that really matters, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to tell a story in your audience's language that resonates with them. So for me, it was that flip of, don't worry about the website, nail the story first. And then once you nail the story, then you can worry about the website. And I think it's a small difference, but it pays off enormous dividends.
I mean, just maybe for the listenership who wants to take that by heart, like, does that mean you were actually like sitting down and writing out a story, or how should we imagine that?
Yep. So I think what I did was I probably conducted about 15 to 20 different interviews with some of the different groups of people that I mentioned. We use Chorus, so I was listening to a ton of call recordings. And what I did was I tried to gather what I think the story should look like. And I wrote it down. It was super rough. It was in a Google Doc. It wasn't polished, nor do I think it needs to be. And what I did was, any of the people that I interviewed, I then go back to them and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing right now. This is what I think the story should be. And I reviewed it with them. I got their feedback. And the big thing was I didn't do that so I could just listen to every single piece of feedback that was said, because if you do that, it's going to water it down. You're not going to truly have like a stance that you're taking, and the message will be diluted. But what I did try to see was, are there certain parts of the story that people are saying, yes, that really resonates with me more than others? Or were there certain parts where like, you know what, that's kind of falling short? And what I tried to do was just identify patterns through that and figure out, hey, let's double down on this part of the story, or maybe the part of the story that I thought was important is not as important as it really is in our audience's eyes. And it was a very iterative process, but I think you have to talk to your customers and your prospects to get a story right and get a story that resonates with them.
Very cool. I mean, we talk a lot on the podcast about conversions and conversion optimization, and I think what you're bringing up there ties straight into it, because that's obviously a part of what drives conversions. I'm just curious more sort of, from your experience in marketing, what have you found to be sort of the biggest challenges in conversion optimization?
Yeah, so that's actually, I'd say one of the areas that we're going to be focusing on through the next, probably 3-ish months is conversion rate optimization, because we think the story is much better on the site. And, to date, as of, I think, Monday this past week, since we launched the site, qualified demo requests are up about 80%, which is huge for us. And we're ruthless about how we qualify people. But we know that there are certain areas of the site that are just not set up for conversion right now, specifically the blog. So what we're trying to do is come up with a kind of an experimentation plan for some of the core pieces of content in our content marketing strategy, and then zeroing in on those pages and trying to run experiments with our target account list and then kind of the control group, and see, how can we drive more conversion. And conversion at the end of the day doesn't always have to be a demo request. That's kind of the holy grail, but we're trying to define what are some of those kind of leading indicators that are important to us to know that, the content that we're creating or the design of the page is actually driving the results that we care about.
Super exciting. So seems like some nice experimentation time ahead.
Oh yeah, a lot of experimentation time. So it's going to be a busy rest of the year.
Very good. Okay, since we're slowly coming to an end of the interview, I would love to sort of learn a little bit more about yourself and your journey. Yep. So I have a couple of rapid fire questions. Are you ready for those?
Let's do it.
Very good. What's the last book that you read?
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Sorry if swear, it's an awesome book.
Very good. What's the one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Getting our current customers to use more of our product.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, what would be the one thing you want to have fixed for your role today?
Having to manually enter things into Salesforce.
I think there's a lot of people feeling that. What is the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
I was awake last night thinking about how we're going to spend some of the additional budget that we have to meet our increased goals. But it's basically we're trying to double down on content, and it's how do we want to spend that wisely.
And the very last question would be, and I'm actually quite curious, if today would be your very first day joining MetaData, what would be the one advice you would give yourself?
I would try to get as many sales reps or customer success managers to schedule calls with customers.
Very, very good. So, Mark, I really appreciate that you took the time, gave us an overview about MetaData, gave us an insight about sort of your journey, out of sort of the pains and that, come with the growth and the things that you're dealing with on a daily basis. I really appreciate this. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about MetaData, what would be the one thing that they should remember?
MetaData makes it easier for B2B marketers to run campaigns that actually deliver results.
That's to the point. Thanks, Mark, for being a guest on Pathmark Presents.
Thank you for having me, Lucas. This was awesome.